I never thought I would be the villain in my own story. When you grow up watching movies about cheaters and liars, you always imagine yourself as the one who gets hurt, the one who discovers the truth, the one who walks away with their dignity intact. You never imagine that you will be the one inflicting the pain. You never imagine that you will look in the mirror one day and not recognize the person staring back at you. But that is exactly what happened to me. My name is Marcus Cole. I am 34 years old, and I am here to tell you the story of how I destroyed my marriage, my reputation, my friendships, and nearly my entire life because I could not stop lying. Some people will tell you that everyone makes mistakes, and that cheating is just a moment of weakness. But I am here to tell you the truth that nobody wants to admit. Some lies never end. They just keep growing, spreading, infecting every corner of your life until there is nothing left but the wreckage of everything you once held dear. I need to take you back to the beginning, to a time when my life looked perfect from the outside. I had been married to Hannah for 6 years when everything started to unravel. We met at a charity gala in London when I was 26 and she was 24. I was working as a senior account manager at a marketing firm, and she was an interior designer who had been hired to help coordinate the event. I remember seeing her across the room, this beautiful woman with warm brown eyes and auburn hair that caught the light every time she moved. She was laughing at something her colleague had said, and I remember thinking that I'd never seen anyone laugh with such genuine joy. It was not performed or calculated. It was real. And I knew in that moment that I had to know her. We talked for 3 hours that night. We talked about our dreams, our fears, our favorite books, our worst dates. By the end of the evening, I knew that I had found someone special, someone different from anyone I had ever met. Hannah had this way of making everyone around her feel seen and heard. She listened not just with her ears, but with her whole being. She remembered details that most people would forget. She would surprise me months later by bringing up something I had mentioned in passing, proving that she had been paying attention in ways that touched my heart deeply. We were engaged within a year and married 6 months after that. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. And for a long time, I believed it too. The first 4 years of our marriage were genuinely happy. We bought a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, adopted a rescue dog named Biscuit, and built a life together that felt stable and warm and full of promise. Hannah's design business was growing, and I had been promoted to director at my firm. We traveled twice a year, spent weekends exploring new restaurants, and fell asleep most nights tangled together on the couch watching documentaries. I loved her. I want to make that clear before I tell you the rest. I loved Hannah with everything I had, which makes what I did even more unforgivable. The cracks started appearing around year 5. It was nothing dramatic at first, just small things. We started having the same arguments over and over again without resolution. She wanted to start trying for a baby, but I kept making excuses about timing and finances and career advancement. The truth was that I was terrified of becoming a father. My own father had been distant and cold, a man who showed up for holidays but never for the moments that mattered. I was afraid that I would become him, that I would fail a child the same way he had failed me. But instead of telling Hannah the truth about my fears, I hid behind excuses. That was my first mistake. I chose avoidance over honesty. And that pattern would come to define the darkest chapter of my life. By year 6, the distance between us had grown into something noticeable. We were still affectionate in public, still held hands and kissed goodbye, but at home, we had become roommates rather than partners. Hannah threw herself into her work, taking on bigger projects that kept her traveling to client sites across the country. I stayed late at the office more often than I should have, finding reasons not to come home to an empty house that reminded me of everything we were not talking about. We were drifting, and neither of us knew how to stop it. That is when Simone Harrington walked into my life. Simone was a new account coordinator who had transferred from our New York branch. She was 29 years old, ambitious, sharp, and absolutely stunning. She had dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, green eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. From her first day at the London office, she made it clear that she was going places. She worked harder than anyone else on her team, stayed late without complaint, and impressed every senior manager with her strategic insights, including me. At first, our interactions were entirely professional. She was assigned to a major campaign that I was overseeing, and we spent long hours in meetings discussing target demographics, brand positioning, and media strategies. I noticed that she was brilliant. I noticed that she had a sharp sense of humor that matched my own. I noticed the way she tilted her head when she was thinking through a problem, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating. But I told myself that noticing these things did not mean anything. I was married. I loved my wife. Looking was not the same as touching. That is what I told myself. That is the first lie I believed. The campaign launch required us to travel to Manchester for a 3-day client presentation. Hannah was away that same week on a project in Edinburgh, so the timing felt almost convenient. I did not think anything of it at the time. I was focused on the work, on impressing the client, on proving that my team could deliver results. But on the second night in Manchester, after a successful presentation and too many drinks at the hotel bar, everything changed. Simone and I were the last ones still talking. The rest of the team had gone to bed, but we had ordered another round and were deep in conversation about life and ambition and all the things we wanted that felt just out of reach. She told me about her complicated relationship with her father, who had never approved of her career choices. I told her about my fears around becoming a parent. The things I had never told Hannah. I do not remember who moved first. I just remember suddenly being very close to her, closer than colleagues should ever be. I remember the way she looked at me like she understood something about me that no one else did. And then I remember kissing her. It lasted only a few seconds before I pulled back, horrified at what I had done. I apologized. I said it was a mistake. I said we should forget it ever happened. Simone just smiled and said she understood. She said sometimes people needed to step outside their lives to remember what they wanted from them. She made it sound philosophical rather than destructive. She made it sound almost reasonable. And that should have been my warning sign, but I was too wrapped up in my own guilt and confusion to see it. I flew home the next day and told myself it was over. It was just one kiss. It meant nothing. I would never tell Hannah because it would only hurt her, and what purpose would that serve? I convinced myself that keeping this secret was an act of protection rather than an act of cowardice. I threw myself back into our marriage with renewed energy. I planned date nights. I brought home flowers. I finally agreed to start seriously discussing the possibility of having children. Hannah noticed the change in me and seemed genuinely happy. She thought we had turned a corner. She had no idea that I was running from something rather than running toward her. For 2 weeks, I believed my own narrative. I was the reformed husband who'd made one small mistake and learned from it. But then Simone had texted me late one night. It was nothing inappropriate, just a question about a work project. But seeing her name on my phone sent a jolt through my entire body. I told myself I was just anxious about maintaining a professional relationship after what had happened. So I replied. We exchanged a few messages about work. Then the conversation drifted. She asked how I was doing, really doing. I told her I was fine. She said she could tell I was lying. She said she recognized the signs of someone who was pretending to be happy. And just like that, I was confiding in her again, telling her things I could not tell my wife. Building an emotional connection that I tried to convince myself was separate from the physical moment we had shared. The emotional affair lasted for 3 months before it became physical again. It happened at a company conference in Birmingham. Hannah was supposed to come with me as my plus one, but she had a last-minute crisis with a client and had to cancel. I told her I understood. I told her work came first. But secretly, I was relieved, because I knew Simone would be there, and I knew what was going to happen. I had been lying to myself for weeks, pretending that I was in control, pretending that I could stop whenever I wanted. But the truth was that I was already gone. I had already made the decision. I just had not admitted it to myself yet. That night in Birmingham was the first time Simone and I slept together. And instead of feeling the crushing guilt I expected, I felt something else entirely. I felt alive in a way I had not felt in years. I felt seen and desired and wanted in a way that made me feel powerful. It was intoxicating. And like all intoxicating things, it was poison disguised as medicine. I told myself this was different. I told myself that what I had with Simone was something special, something that my marriage could not provide. I told myself I deserved to feel this way. I was building a tower of lies so high that I could no longer see the ground. The affair continued for 8 months. 8 months of secret phone calls and hidden text messages and carefully coordinated schedules. 8 months of looking Hannah in the eyes and telling her I loved her while knowing I was betraying her in the worst possible way. 8 months of watching myself become someone I hated and being unable to stop. Every lie I told required another lie to support it. Every secret needed another secret to protect it. I became an expert at compartmentalization. I could hold Hannah's hand at dinner and think about Simone. I could kiss my wife goodnight and text my mistress the moment she fell asleep. I became two different people living two different lives, and neither of them was real. The first close call came about 4 months in. Hannah found a receipt in my jacket pocket for a restaurant I had never mentioned visiting. It was a place in Soho where Simone and I had gone for lunch. Hannah asked about it casually, the way you ask about anything that does not quite add up. I felt my heart stop. But I had become so skilled at lying that the excuse came out before I even had to think about it. I told her it was a business lunch with a potential client who wanted to discuss a new project. She nodded and moved on, but something in her eyes lingered, a small seed of doubt that I had planted without realizing it. The second close call came 2 months later. Hannah's brother David called me one afternoon and asked if we could meet for coffee. David had always been protective of his sister. He was 6 years older than Hannah and had practically raised her after their parents divorced when she was young. He was also deeply perceptive in a way that made me uncomfortable. We met at a cafe near my office, and for the first 20 minutes, everything seemed normal. We talked about football and work and the upcoming family holiday. Then David leaned forward and looked me straight in the eyes. He said that Hannah seemed different lately, distracted, worried. He asked if everything was okay between us. I assured him that we were fine, that work had just been stressful for both of us. But the way he looked at me before nodding and changing the subject told me he was not convinced. David was watching me now, and I knew I needed to be more careful. The third close call almost ended everything. Simone had become more demanding over time. She wanted more of my attention, more of my time, more assurance that what we had was real. She started making comments about our future, about what would happen once I left my wife. I had never told her I was planning to leave Hannah. I had never made any promises about our relationship going anywhere. But Simone had constructed her own narrative, and in her version of events, I was just weeks away from filing for divorce. When I tried to gently correct this assumption, she became upset. She said I was stringing her along. She said she was not the kind of woman who shared. She threatened to tell Hannah everything if I did not make a decision soon. I panicked. For the first time since the affair began, I truly panicked. I begged Simone to be patient. I told her I needed more time to figure things out. I promised her that I would make a choice soon. I said everything she wanted to hear because I could not bear the thought of Hannah finding out the truth from someone else. Simone calmed down and apologized for pressuring me. She said she loved me and that love sometimes made people do crazy things. But that night, I could not sleep. I lay awake next to Hannah, watching her breathe, and I realized for the first time just how deep I had dug myself. I was trapped between two women, two lives, two sets of lies, and there was no way out that did not end in devastation. I wish I could tell you that I came to my senses after that. I wish I could tell you that I ended the affair and confessed everything to Hannah before it was too late. But that is not what happened. Instead, I doubled down on my deception. I bought Simone expensive gifts to keep her happy. I planned more elaborate alibis to cover my tracks. I became so consumed with maintaining the fiction of both my lives that I stopped living either one of them authentically. And all the while, the lies kept multiplying. They were like a disease spreading through every part of my existence, contaminating everything they touched. The unraveling began on a Thursday evening in October. Hannah had been acting strange for a few days, quieter than usual, more withdrawn. I assumed she was stressed about work and did not push. I was too relieved by her distraction to question it. That evening, she asked if we could talk. She sat me down in the living room, and for a moment, I thought she was going to tell me she wanted a divorce. I thought the guilt must be showing on my face somehow, that she had sensed the truth without anyone telling her. But what she said next broke my heart in an entirely different way. Hannah told me she was pregnant. She had found out 2 weeks earlier, but had been waiting for the right moment to tell me. She knew I had been hesitant about having children, and she was worried about my reaction. She said she understood if I was not ready, but that she hoped this might be the beginning of something beautiful for us. She looked at me with such hope, such vulnerability, such trust, and I felt the full weight of my betrayal crushing me from the inside out. I was going to be a father. I was going to have a child with the woman I had been systematically deceiving for 8 months. The woman who believed in me. The woman who still loved me despite everything I had done. I held Hannah in my arms and told her I was thrilled. I told her this was the best news I had ever received. I told her I loved her and that I would be the best father I could possibly be. And in that moment, I meant every word. But I also knew that everything had just become infinitely more complicated. I could not leave Hannah now. Not while she was pregnant with our child, which meant I had to end things with Simone immediately and permanently. It was the only right thing to do. It was the first honest decision I had made in months. But what I did not realize was that ending an affair is never as simple as walking away, especially when the other person has their own agenda. I met Simone the next day and told her that we needed to stop seeing each other. I told her about Hannah's pregnancy, though I realize now that was a mistake. I thought she would understand. I thought she would see that the situation had changed and that we had no choice but to let this go. Instead, she laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was cold, hollow, almost mocking. She said she knew about the pregnancy. She had known for days. She said she had a friend who worked at Hannah's gynecologist's office, and she had made some inquiries. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. She had been spying on my wife. She had been tracking our private medical information. I had no idea who this woman truly was. Simone leaned forward and spoke very calmly. She said that she had not spent 8 months of her life being someone's secret just to be discarded when it became inconvenient. She said that if I thought I could walk away without consequences, I was mistaken. She told me about everything she had saved. Screenshots of our messages, photos I did not even know she had taken, recordings of phone calls where I said things about Hannah that would destroy my marriage if they ever came to light. She had been building a case against me from the very beginning, and now she owned me. I want to pause here and tell you something important. I know that Simone's behavior was manipulative and calculated. I know that she violated boundaries that should never be crossed. But I also know that none of this would have happened if I had not made the choices I made. She could not have manipulated me if I had not given her the ammunition. Every piece of evidence she had was something I had willingly provided. Every secret she held over my head was something I had whispered into the darkness of hotel rooms and empty conference halls. I was not a victim of Simone Harrington. I was a victim of my own weakness, and that is a truth I have had to live with every single day since. Simone told me that she did not want much, just my continued attention and affection. She said she was willing to share me with Hannah as long as I did not try to leave her behind. She framed it as a compromise, as if what she was proposing was somehow reasonable. I told her I needed time to think. I left that meeting shaking with fear and fury and self-loathing. I had created a monster, and now that monster was holding my entire life hostage. For the next 3 weeks, I lived in a state of constant dread. I continued seeing Simone because I was terrified of what she would do if I stopped. But I also felt physically ill every time I looked at Hannah. She was glowing with the early stages of pregnancy, talking about nursery colors and baby names, completely unaware that her husband was being blackmailed by his mistress. I wanted to confess everything. I wanted to throw myself at Hannah's mercy and beg for forgiveness. But I was too much of a coward. I kept telling myself that I was protecting her, that the stress of learning the truth could harm the pregnancy. But the real reason was simpler and more shameful. I was protecting myself. The situation became untenable during Hannah's 10-week checkup. I had been planning to attend, to see the ultrasound and hear our baby's heartbeat for the first time. But on the morning of the appointment, Simone demanded that I meet her for lunch. She said she had something important to discuss and that it could not wait. I told her I had a commitment I could not break. She responded with a single message. I know about the appointment. If you don't come, I'll be there too. The threat was clear. She would show up at the clinic. She would confront Hannah. She would expose everything in the most public and painful way possible. I called in sick to work and met Simone at a restaurant far from anywhere Hannah might go. She was smiling when I arrived, as if this was just another date, another romantic rendezvous between two people in love. I asked her what she wanted. She said she wanted us to go on a trip together, a week in Paris, just the two of us. She said she deserved something real, something public, something that proved I was serious about her. I told her that was impossible. She said nothing was impossible if I cared enough to make it happen. The conversation went in circles for an hour until I finally snapped. I told her the truth. I told her that what we had was never real. I told her I had been using her to escape my own unhappiness, and she had been using me for whatever twisted purpose she had in mind. I told her I was done being controlled by her threats. I told her to do whatever she wanted, but that I was walking away and never looking back. It was the bravest and most reckless thing I had ever done, and it was also the moment that set everything else in motion. Simone did not react the way I expected. She did not cry or scream or threaten. She just smiled, finished her wine, and said one sentence that haunts me to this day. You really do not know who I am, do you? Then she walked out of the restaurant, and I did not hear from her for 3 full days. I told myself that she had accepted the end of our relationship. I told myself that her threats had been empty all along. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, I had escaped the consequences of my actions. I should have known better. I should have known that Simone never did anything without a purpose. 3 days later, Hannah received an envelope at our home. It arrived with no return address, just her name printed in neat, anonymous letters. She opened it while I was at work. By the time I came home that evening, everything had changed. She was sitting in the living room, perfectly still, holding a stack of printed photographs. I could see what they were from across the room. Pictures of me and Simone, in restaurants, in hotel lobbies, walking too close on city streets. There must have been 20 or 30 images, each one telling a story that words could never capture. Hannah looked up at me with an expression I will never forget. It was not anger, it was not even sadness. It was the look of someone who had just realized that everything they believed was a lie. I tried to explain, I tried to tell her that it was over, that I had ended things, that I had chosen her and our family. But every word out of my mouth sounded hollow and pathetic. Hannah did not yell at me. She did not throw things or demand answers. She just sat there looking at those photographs, and then she said something that cut deeper than any scream ever could. She said, I knew. Part of me knew for months. I just did not want to believe it. She told me that she had noticed the late nights, the distracted conversations, the way I flinched every time my phone buzzed. She had noticed the distance that had grown between us and had blamed herself for not being enough. She had spent months thinking that she was the problem when all along it was me. The conversation that followed lasted hours. Hannah asked questions I could barely bring myself to answer. She wanted to know when it started, how it started, whether I had ever loved her at all. I told her everything, every shameful detail, every lie I had told to cover my tracks. With each revelation, I watched something die in her eyes. The trust that had taken years to build was destroyed in a single night, and there was nothing I could do to bring it back. When the sun came up, Hannah told me she needed time to think. She asked me to stay somewhere else while she figured out what she wanted to do. I packed a bag and went to a hotel. It was the longest walk of my life. For the next 2 weeks, I lived in a fog of guilt and self-hatred. I went through the motions at work, but I could not focus on anything except the damage I had caused. I sent Hannah messages every day, apologizing, begging, promising to be better. She rarely responded. When she did, it was just to ask practical questions about bills or the dog. The silence was unbearable. Every hour felt like a week. Every night alone in that hotel room felt like a punishment designed specifically for someone like me. And the worst part was knowing that I deserved every second of it. David called me on the 10th day. He told me that he knew everything. Hannah had confided in him, and he was furious. He said things I will not repeat, things that were harsh but entirely justified. But then he said something that surprised me. He said that despite everything, Hannah was considering giving me a second chance. She did not want their child to grow up without a father. She did not want to throw away 6 years of marriage without trying to fix it. She was willing to go to counseling, to work through the betrayal, to see if there was anything left worth saving. But she had one condition. She needed to know the full truth. Not just about Simone, but about everything, every secret, every lie, every hidden corner of my life. If I held anything back, it was over for good. I agreed immediately. I would have agreed to anything at that point. But as I sat down to write out everything I had done, I realized that the full truth was more complicated than I had admitted even to myself. The affair with Simone was not the only secret I had been keeping. There were other things, smaller things that I had convinced myself did not matter. A flirtatious exchange with a colleague at a Christmas party years before. A secret friendship with an ex-girlfriend that I had maintained through social media. Small debts I had hidden from Hannah because I was embarrassed about my financial mistakes. None of these were on the same level as the affair, but they were all forms of deception. They were all cracks in the foundation of our trust. And if I wanted a real second chance, I had to confess everything. The conversation with Hannah was brutal. I told her about the messages with my ex, the hidden credit card, the moment at the Christmas party when I had almost crossed a line but stopped myself. With each confession, her face grew more stony, more distant. She asked why I had never told her any of this. I said I did not know. I said I was afraid. I said I had convinced myself that if she did not know about it, it could not hurt her. She laughed bitterly at that and said, "You really believe that? You really thought that lies only count if someone finds out?" And I had no answer, because she was right. A lie is a lie whether or not it is ever discovered. The damage it does to your soul is the same either way. Hannah made her decision 3 days later. She said she was willing to try, but things would be different now. There would be complete transparency. Access to my phone, my email, my social media. Weekly counseling sessions for both of us. And a clear understanding that if I ever lied to her again, about anything, no matter how small, our marriage would be over. No second chances. No forgiveness. Just divorce papers and a custody arrangement. I accepted every condition without hesitation. I would have crawled across broken glass if it meant earning back her trust. I moved back home, and for a while it seemed like maybe we could rebuild. The counseling was painful but productive. We talked about things we had never discussed before. Fears, resentments, disappointments that had festered for years. I learned that Hannah had felt abandoned long before the affair, that my emotional distance had been wearing her down for longer than I realized. She learned that my childhood had left me with a pathological fear of vulnerability, that I had never learned how to be truly open with anyone. We were both broken in different ways, and our brokenness had led us here. Understanding that did not erase what I had done, but it gave us a framework for moving forward. But healing is not a straight line. There were good days and terrible days. There were moments when Hannah would look at me with something like love, and moments when she would look at me with pure contempt. Every time her phone buzzed, I saw her tense slightly, wondering if it was another envelope, another revelation. The trust we were trying to rebuild was fragile, and we both knew it could shatter at any moment. I was walking on eggshells in my own home, terrified of making a single wrong move. And then Simone reappeared. 6 weeks after the photographs arrived, she texted me from a new number. The message was short. "I hope you are happy now, but this is not over. Some truths are still waiting to be told." I showed the message to Hannah immediately. I was not going to make the same mistake twice. We called the police, filed a harassment report, and documented everything. But Simone was careful. She never made direct threats, never said anything that could be used against her in court. She was playing a game, and she was playing it well. Over the next month, small things started happening. My car was keyed in the work parking lot. A dead flower arrangement was delivered to our home. Hannah received an anonymous email suggesting that I was still seeing Simone, that our reconciliation was just another lie. Each incident was small enough to seem random, but together they formed a pattern. Simone was not going to let me go. She was determined to make sure that even if she could not have me, no one could. Hannah's trust in me began to fracture again. She believed that I was not in contact with Simone, but she could not understand why this woman was so fixated on destroying us. She asked me what I had done to create such obsession. I had no good answer. I had treated Simone badly, yes. I had used her for my own selfish needs and then discarded her when she became inconvenient. But her response seemed disproportionate, almost unhinged. There had to be something I was missing. The truth came out in the most unexpected way. David, Hannah's brother, had been quietly investigating Simone on his own. He had never trusted my version of events, and he wanted to protect his sister from any further surprises. What he discovered was shocking. Simone had a history, not with me specifically, but with men like me. She had been involved in 2 previous affairs with married men, and both had ended in similar chaos. One of the men had lost his job after his company received anonymous complaints about his conduct. The other had watched his marriage implode when his wife received a detailed letter describing every intimate moment of the affair. Simone was not just a woman scorned. She was a serial predator who targeted vulnerable married men and then destroyed them when they tried to leave. David also discovered something else. Something that made my blood run cold. Simone had not found her way to my company by accident. She had transferred specifically because she had researched me beforehand. She knew about my marriage, my career trajectory, even my personality type. She had profiled me like a target and then positioned herself exactly where she needed to be to catch my attention. Everything about our relationship had been calculated from the very beginning. I had thought I was choosing to cheat, but in reality I had been chosen. I share this not to absolve myself of responsibility. I still made every decision that led to the affair. I still told every lie. I still betrayed Hannah in ways that cannot be undone. But learning about Simone's pattern helped explain why the affair had escalated so quickly, why she had been so prepared with evidence and threats, why she had refused to let go even when I made it clear I was done. She was not in love with me. She had never been in love with me. I was just another trophy in her collection, another life she could destroy for reasons I will never fully understand. Hannah and I brought this information to the police. Combined with our documentation of her harassment, it was enough to get a restraining order issued. Simone challenged it in court, but the evidence David had gathered was overwhelming. 2 other women came forward to testify about similar experiences. One of them was the ex-wife of the man who had lost his job. She had never connected the dots before, never realized that Simone had been the source of the anonymous complaints. But now she saw the pattern, and she was furious. The judge granted the restraining order and strongly suggested that Simone seek psychological help. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it, that Simone disappeared from our lives and Hannah and I went on to rebuild our marriage in peace. But reality is messier than that. Simone did stay away physically, but the damage she had done lingered. Hannah could not shake the feeling that our whole lives had been contaminated by my choices. Every time she looked at our home, she thought about the lies I had told within its walls. Every time she saw my phone, she remembered the messages I had sent to another woman. The pregnancy progressed, but her joy in it was muted by the trauma of what had happened. I had taken something precious from her that no amount of apologies could restore. Our son was born on a rainy Wednesday in April. We named him Oliver. He was perfect in every way, with Hannah's warm eyes and my stubborn chin. Holding him for the first time, I felt a love more intense than anything I had experienced before. I made a promise to him in that delivery room. I promised that I would be the father mine had never been, that I would show up, not just for holidays, but for every moment that mattered, that I would teach him by example what it meant to be a man of integrity. And I knew that keeping that promise meant being honest, even when honesty was painful. Hannah and I continued counseling for the first year of Oliver's life. We made progress, real progress in understanding each other and healing from the betrayal. But there were still walls between us that we could not seem to break down. She told me once that she forgave me, but she would never be able to forget. She said that every time she looked at me, there were two images superimposed: the man she had married and the man who had broken her heart. She did not know how to reconcile them. Neither did I. The decision to separate came 18 months after Oliver was born. It was mutual, or at least that is what we told ourselves. Hannah needed space to figure out who she was outside of our marriage. I needed to stop performing the role of perfect husband and actually become someone worthy of forgiveness. We agreed to co-parent peacefully, to prioritize Oliver's well-being above our own pain. And for the most part, we have kept that promise. We are not enemies. We are something sadder than that. We are two people who loved each other deeply and lost that love because of choices I made. The divorce was finalized last month. I moved into a small apartment across town. I see Oliver 3 days a week and cherish every second with him. Hannah and I communicate politely, cordially, like colleagues who used to be friends. Sometimes I catch glimpses of the woman I fell in love with at that charity gala so many years ago. The one who laughed with genuine joy, who made everyone feel seen. She is still there, underneath the hurt, but she belongs to someone else now. A future version of her that I will never get to know. I have spent a lot of time thinking about what I learned from all of this, and the truth is uncomfortable. I learned that lies do not end when you stop telling them. They keep living in the minds of everyone who believed you. They keep poisoning relationships you thought you could save. They become part of your permanent record, following you into every future interaction, coloring how people see you forever. Hannah will never look at me without remembering what I did. Oliver will someday learn the truth about why his parents are not together. My reputation at work has never fully recovered from the whispers that circulated after the restraining order became public knowledge. The lies I told to protect myself ended up destroying everything I was trying to protect. I also learned something about karma, though I hesitate to use that word because it sounds too neat, too spiritual for what I experienced. It was not some cosmic force punishing me for my sins. It was simply the natural consequence of my actions playing out over time. When you lie to people, they eventually find out. When you betray someone's trust, that trust does not come back easily, if it ever comes back at all. When you treat another human being as a tool for your own gratification, do not be surprised when they respond with anger and pain. I set these forces in motion myself. I have no one to blame but me. Simone never contacted me again after the restraining order. I do not know where she is now or whether she has found her next target. Part of me hopes she got the help the judge recommended. Part of me hopes she faces consequences for everything she did. But mostly, I just hope she has found peace, whatever that looks like for someone like her. Holding on to anger at her would only poison me further, and I have already poisoned enough of my life. If you are listening to this and you are in the early stages of an affair, I have one piece of advice. Stop. Stop right now before it is too late. I know it feels exciting. I know it feels like an escape from whatever unhappiness you are running from. I know you have convinced yourself that you can control it, that you can walk away whenever you want, that nobody will ever find out. But you are lying to yourself just like I did. Affairs do not stay contained. They spread. They infect. They destroy. And the person who ends up losing the most is always you. If you are thinking about cheating but have not yet crossed that line, please talk to your partner instead. Tell them you are unhappy. Tell them what is missing from your relationship. Give them the chance to fix it with you or the chance to leave with their dignity intact. Honesty might end your relationship, but lying will end it worse. I promise you that. And if you are the person who has been cheated on, I am so sorry. I know that what happened to you is not your fault. I know that you did nothing to deserve the betrayal. I hope you can find the strength to heal, whether that means forgiving your partner or walking away. But please do not let someone else's failure define the rest of your life. You deserve better than that. You deserve someone who sees your worth and treats you accordingly. I am not the same man I was 3 years ago. I am not a reformed cheater or a cautionary tale. I am just someone living with the consequences of his choices, trying every day to be a little bit better than I was the day before. I go to therapy now. I journal about my feelings instead of burying them. I have honest conversations even when they are uncomfortable. I am learning slowly how to be the kind of person I should have been all along. Oliver just turned 2 last week. He is walking now, running actually, getting into everything he can reach. He has this laugh that sounds like pure sunshine. When I pick him up from Hannah's house, he reaches for me with both arms, and I feel the joy so profound, it almost erases the pain that led us here. Almost. Because that is the thing about consequences. They never fully go away. They just become part of the background, part of the texture of your life. You learn to carry them. You learn to live with the weight. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if I will ever find love again, or if I even deserve to. I do not know if Hannah will ever fully heal from what I did to her. I do not know if Oliver will grow up to be proud of his father or ashamed of him. What I do know is that I will keep trying. I will keep showing up. I will keep being honest, even when it hurts, because some lies never end. But the truth has no end either. It just keeps growing, spreading, offering chances for redemption to anyone brave enough to speak it. I am speaking my truth now, for whatever it is worth, and I hope that by sharing my story, I can help even one person avoid making the same mistakes I did. My name is Marcus Cole. I cheated on my partner. I learned that some lies never end, and this is my confession. If you have made it this far, thank you for listening. I know this was not an easy story to hear. It was not easy to tell, but it is the truth. And the truth I am finally learning is the only thing that sets you free. The apartment is quiet now. Oliver's toys are scattered across the floor, waiting for his next visit. Through the window, I can see the city lights coming on as evening settles in. Somewhere out there, Hannah is putting our son to bed in the home we used to share. Somewhere out there, life is going on without me in it, continuing despite everything that happened. I pick up one of Oliver's stuffed animals, a little brown bear he loves, and I hold it against my chest. It smells like baby shampoo and innocence. It reminds me of everything I am fighting for, everything I refuse to lose again. Tomorrow, I will wake up and make choices. Small ones, ordinary ones, but each choice will be a chance to be better. Each moment will be an opportunity to prove that I learned something from the wreckage of my former life. That is all any of us can do, really. Wake up, make choices, try to be better than we were yesterday. Some lies never end. But some stories do. And this is where mine stops. Not with a triumphant conclusion or a perfectly wrapped ending. Just with a man sitting alone in an apartment, holding a stuffed bear, thinking about what he lost and what he might still be able to save. The truth is out now, all of it. And whatever happens next, at least I will face it as someone who finally stopped lying. Thank you for listening. This has been my confession, and I hope wherever you are that you choose truth before it is too late. Because once you start lying, it gets harder and harder to stop. And some lies, as I have learned the hard way, truly never end.